Am I going to have food?
What will happen in Broadway's new opening act?
We're in uncharted waters again.
The show must go on.
There is reason to hope again.
I think people are going to be crying. I know I will.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
Fetterman is one of the only Democrats fully embracing President Biden's support.
And John, thank you very much for running. I really do appreciate it.
They have told us that they did half-baked impeachment and that they didn't make the strongest case possible.
Here in Nevada, voters are very aware of the high stakes of this Senate race.
Their experience is a direct result of Joe Biden and Senator Catherine Cortez Masto.
I think the Inflation Reduction Act was a great first start, but I do think absolutely there's more that we can do together.
The economy, democracy, and churning dynamics over the potential 2024 presidential race, that all hovers over this week and the midterm elections. Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Robert Costa, coming to you from our Washington, D.C. bureau. Thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with just 19 days to go until Election Day. And races in the battleground states, they're heating up across the country in the final stretch. We have two of our CBS News colleagues in a couple of states with tight races. Correspondent Lilia Luciano is reporting from Las Vegas, and senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, he's in Philly. Let's turn first to Lilia for the latest on the high-stakes Senate race in Nevada. New CBS News polling out today on the Senate race shows a virtual dead heat between Democratic incumbent Catherine Cortez Masto and Republican challenger Adam Laxalt. Lilia, good to have you with us here on Red and Blue. What's the latest on this race that's on everybody's radar?
That's right, Bob. It is on everybody's radar. The power on the Senate could be up to this race. As you know, there's very few that are this tight, and voters here in Nevada know that. 8 out of 10 in our battleground tracker, 8 out of 10 voters responded that they think when they vote for a senator, when they pick one, they are deciding who takes control of the Senate. Here in Nevada, Latinos are hugely important. They make up 20% of the electorate. And of course, we talk about the Latino vote and what matters to Latinos. Well, here, what matters to Latinos is exactly the same as for everybody else. It's the economy, it's inflation, and it's crime. And those are areas where Adam Laxalt does have an advantage. Cortez Masto is the incumbent. He has been pointing fingers at the policies that are supported and voted on by Democrats as the cause, especially for inflation. Let's listen to what he said to us earlier this week.
I tell them to look outside, and everything they experience is a direct result of Joe Biden and Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. All the pain they're feeling today at the pump, at the grocery store, in their family budgets is a direct result of policy. They're killing the American dream.
You know, he's saying it's Democrats, it's their policies, including the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan that's putting too much money into the economy, it's too much spending, and that is contributing to inflation. Voters here are saying that, you know, they're not sure, they're divided on whether Cortez Masto's policies are helping or hurting them. I asked her specifically, what's your message to voters with your opponent saying it's your fault and the fault of Democrats? This is what she told me.
I think the Inflation Reduction Act was a great first start, capping the cost of insulin, right, at $35 a month. That's why, to me, standing with our seniors in the AARP to lower those costs was important, and why the Inflation Reduction Act was important. I also know that it lowers energy costs for families, and I get to talk about that. But I do think absolutely there's more that we can do together.
Bob, this is a state, and this city in particular, where COVID closures hurt people really bad, where inflation is higher than in most parts of the country, and where gas prices are also extremely high. So the conversation here is zeroed in on inflation, and people will decide which of those candidates will help their pocket.
Lilia, let's dig a little bit deeper on the Latino vote. There's talk in several states in the Southwest that it could be trending to the right in some races for different reasons. Are you detecting that in any way?
You know, here we spent time with the Culinary Union. That is probably the strongest ally for Cortez Masto. They have endorsed her. But there are other powerful unions that are, not endorsing the Democratic candidates. Also, when it comes to the gubernatorial race, Sisolak had the support, the endorsement of the teachers union last time around. This time, they're not endorsing him or Lombardo. Lombardo, of course, is a sheriff of Clark County, and as a sheriff, he now has the police union behind him, which that Sisolak had last time around. So when it comes to those unions, those organizations that support workers, and of course here in Nevada, a lot of people are workers, it's really up for grabs. Yes, the Culinary Union is the most powerful one, and there I talked to voters. They said we care about housing most of all because housing prices are really going up, and we do trust that Democrats are thinking about us. But the Republicans have very strong messaging and have people on the ground. I spoke with some of them yesterday who are saying, look, it's about the economy, and it's Republicans that have your back. They're saying inflation is being worsened by these Democratic policies. So both, Cortez Masto last night was campaigning pretty late night at a brewery, talking to people grabbing beers. Today, she's with a group of Latinas, but so is Laxalt with a group of Latinos talking about education and crime.
Reporting for CBS from the breweries of Nevada. We appreciate the in-depth reporting as ever. Lilia, thank you so much. Best wishes on the trail. Let's turn now to Pennsylvania, where we find Ed O'Keefe, our friend. He's in Pennsylvania. He's in Philadelphia, it looks like, the beautiful Independence Hall behind you, Ed. And you've been talking to some of the power brokers in the city, like Congressman Brendan Boyle. What are you learning?
That's right, Bob. Good to see you. Look, the president has arrived. He's on his way to a fundraiser just a few blocks away near what they call the largest Wawa in the world. Who knew that such a thing would be tracked? He's here for a closed-door fundraiser with John Fetterman, the Democratic Senate candidate, who appeared with him earlier today at what they call an official event. Official because it was basically just the president and elected officials over in Pittsburgh at the site of that bridge that had collapsed in late January, right as the infrastructure bill was being passed and touted by the president. Notably, Fetterman showed up today in a tie. Remember, he's been the candidate that is known for campaigning in a hoodie and shorts, and today hanging out with the president in far more formal attire. Here in Pennsylvania, they see what we're seeing, Bob, tightening polls that suggest this is a 2 or 3 point race, 1 or 2 point race, some that perhaps are less reliable, suggesting it's a tie game. Either way, with 3 weeks to go, the president believing that by coming here today and making plans to be here again even next week with the vice president in tow, they can start to build the momentum needed for Democrats in these closing weeks. We spoke with Congressman Boyle, but we also heard today from Cedric Richmond, who's, of course, the former head of public engagement at the White House at an event hosted by CBS News. He was asked about the fact that the president continues to hold these official events, less overt campaign rallies. Why is that? Well, listen to what he had to say.
You have to talk to voters and just articulate the accomplishments. So that's why you see President Biden out doing more policy-type events than rallies, because he's touting what we've been able to do and been very intentional about it. So I just think that Democrats have to do that. And the hard part of campaigning is knocking doors, talking to voters.
Ed, when you
and what's
listen
notable
to
is Cedric.
Oh, go ahead, Ed.
Go ahead, Bob.
Tell me what's on your mind. What's in your notebook, Ed?
Well, what's interesting about that is, again, the White House has been taking great pains to suggest that the campaigning is coming, but that they feel this is an effective way to get him out here. Here's the issue. It's been mostly these sort of small events. You don't get a lot of interaction with the general public, but they feel this is the way to do it because it allows him to go out and remind people about the infrastructure bill, as he did today in Pittsburgh, about the Inflation Reduction Act, about the other steps he's taken this week in terms of student loans and abortion rights. And he hinted today at a stop in Pittsburgh that the campaigning is coming. We did talk to Congressman Brendan Boyle, who you mentioned, and he said he agrees that Democrats perhaps need to do a better job of selling what they've done. Take a listen to what he said. Should more Democrats be willing to campaign with him publicly?
I certainly am. Now, granted, I am in a pretty Democratic district in Philadelphia, but here's what I say, and I say this quite proudly. This president and this Congress has had the most successful Democratic policy, domestic policy record since the 1965-66 Congress.
Boyle also suggested, Bob, that Democrats need to do a better job of selling what they've done. Again, the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, the gun control measures that were passed over the summer. He comes from a very blue part of Pennsylvania. This, in fact, is in his district. No doubt about who wins around these parts, as you know quite well. But I think the argument he's making is they've done a lot of big things. He argues the biggest legislative achievements since the 1960s. Why aren't Democrats proudly campaigning on that? He'd like to see more of it.
Ed, you're laying out how the Democrats feel like they need to talk about their legislative accomplishments that they view as very positive for the economy. They need to talk about their policies. But you're such a great reporter on President Biden, having covered his campaign. And as I look at you in Philadelphia there, I keep thinking back to September and the speech he made on democracy in Philadelphia, in that same area, that same neighborhood. And I wonder, as a longtime reporter on Biden, on the campaign and now at the White House, are you hearing that from the White House, from Fetterman, this democracy idea that he articulated in September? Because you look at Pennsylvania, there's Doug Mastriano, the Republican gubernatorial nominee, has been an election denier. Josh Shapiro's talked about it. But what about from the president? And where is democracy in the Pennsylvania discussion?
Well, I mean, given that Mastriano appears to be fading as a candidate, I mean, I saw advertising again today that reminds viewers that he was in Washington on January 6th and has said he would potentially not certify the results of a Pennsylvania election if he had questions about it. It doesn't come up much here. It doesn't come up much across the country. There was one survey today that suggests only about 2% of House Democratic advertising, for example, even mentions January 6th and the concerns about democracy. The candidates see the polling we see, which is that the economy and inflation are the top of mind concerns. Yes, there were some over the summer, especially at the height of the January 6th committee hearings, that suggested that people were concerned about the future of democracy. And they're concerned about the fact that Democrats and Republicans can't work together, can't even be in the same room together and have civilized conversations. The president wanted to give that address because it remains a bedrock reason for his continued political existence, that he's defending and wants to see democracy thrive not only in this country, but around the world. So the White House will defend his decision to give that speech until he's out of office. But politically, it didn't necessarily give him the bounce that they might have hoped for, other than to lay down the marker again and say the Democratic Party and this president are working on defending democracy. Republicans are not, and there are deniers on the ballot. Has that moved the needle here in Pennsylvania or anywhere else? I don't think we're going to get a good gauge of that until Election Day. The other thing to point out, since you mentioned this, yes, this is a president who comes here quite frequently. We should remind people why. Obviously, born in Scranton, lives only about 45 minutes away in good traffic at Wilmington. This is the 14th visit he has made to Pennsylvania since he became commander-in-chief. Next to Delaware and his stops in Camp David, he comes here most often. There's a calculation that says you win the Senate seat here and everything else holds, although the Nevada numbers suggest they might not, you can at least get back to an even 50-50 Senate, maybe 51-49. This is the one he wants to help with because he believes he understands the politics of the Keystone State better than most, and we'll see.
Ed, when you said why, I thought you were going to say cheesesteaks. As a Philly guy, I do miss them. They're not the same here in Washington. Hopefully you can get one during your trip there. Ed O'Keefe, thank you very much. A number of high-profile Republicans have been traveling to key states in recent months, but we wonder, are they campaigning for more than the midterm candidates? Or let's check in on our 2024 Campaign Watch. We'll do that next. For now, you're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy, potentially at my peril. There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became this sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future.
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
When weather turns extreme,
massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane,
every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
we are so excited we just can't hide it.
CBS Mornings are, well, everything your morning should be.
Let's do it!
Let's go! CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Robert Costa. Some Republicans, they're already looking past the midterm elections. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, he was on the trail with Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake on Wednesday. And former Vice President Mike Pence, he teased his own possible 2024 bid during an event held at Georgetown University last night.
If Donald Trump is the Republican nominee for president in 2024, will you vote for him?
Well, there might be somebody else I'd prefer more. All my focus has been on the midterm elections, and it'll stay that way for the next 20 days. But after that, we'll be thinking about the future, ours and the nation's, and I'll keep you posted, okay?
Meanwhile, our CBS News colleague, senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge, spoke to former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo about possibly running in 2024 earlier today.
So should we expect an announcement on a presidential run January, February?
Yeah, somewhere after the first of the year. First caucus isn't until the beginning of 24, but sometime in the spring of next year, we will begin to turn our focus to trying to get that right. And if it's not, Catherine, if it's not me, if we conclude it's not me, I'm going to stay in this fight.
I mean, it's not all of this is a coincidence. You've got a book. You're much fitter. So are you going to run for president next year?
I don't know. We haven't figured that out. One could draw a straight line there. One shouldn't. That would be bad data management. I was fitter before I was in politics too, so this is not unique. You don't have to decide you want to run for president to get healthier.
Pompeo is out on tour for a forthcoming book, another common campaign prerequisite from time to time. But when we come back, why Republicans are already talking about impeachment should they take control of the House in November. You're streaming Red and Blue.
Thinking about it.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping up their attacks to extort victims. Let's start with easy. Who's attacking? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
I'm thinking about it.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt. Absolutely.
As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, they are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
Massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane.
every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When it comes to the money you spend every day, we have you covered every morning. Making money makes sense. Weekdays on CBS Mornings.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Robert Costa. A new book, great new book, detailing the behind the scenes on Capitol Hill during both of the impeachments of former President Donald Trump. It's called Unchecked, the untold story behind Congress's botched impeachments of Donald Trump. The book is out now. It shares harrowing details of closed-door conversations among congressional leaders and the infighting within both the Democratic and Republican parties. One of the co-authors of this new terrific book, Karin Demerjian, joins us now. Karin is also a Washington Post national security reporter. So good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Unchecked. It's done, and it's great.
It is done, and we hope that people find it great. It was.
There's so much in here. What stands out to you as the most surprising, as someone who knows the national security world, knows Congress so well? When you had time to do a book, it gave you time to really dig in. What shocked you? What stunned you?
Right. Well, I mean, what we did is we went back to the sources that we had been reporting on in real time and more, and basically learned how many times there were very different things going on behind the scenes and what we were watching play out on the camera than the explanations that the principals, that the lawmakers were actually giving the country for what they were doing and their motivations for why. We detail, a lot of the book goes into, the slow intra-fighting, party fighting in the Democratic Party to even get to impeachment in the first place. Nancy Pelosi, super resistant to that. She had come of age during the Clinton years, thought that impeachment could blow back on the impeacher and was afraid of launching a weapon that could turn into a boomerang, and how she resisted for 9 months before she embraced impeachment. Finally, after embracing impeachment the first time, tries to just get it over with really quickly. But I think probably readers will find that the real shocker, the even bigger shocker moments come in the second impeachment. That there was a moment on January 6th. You had the leaders of both parties, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, ready to ditch Trump, reaching out to their Democratic colleagues to say, we have to work together here. And you had some rank and file Democrats present Nancy Pelosi and her deputy Steny Hoyer with impeachment articles that night on January 6th, saying, let's do this now, while everybody feels the anger, before they have a chance, before Republicans have a chance to politically think. And Pelosi said, no, thank you, and delayed it for several days.
Why did she say that? What was that? Why at that crossroads did she make that decision based on your reporting? Well,
based on our reporting, this kind of goes again towards Pelosi feeling like impeachment can be a live wire. Impeachment can be a very, very dangerous weapon to have to handle. And at that juncture, we were about 2 weeks away from the end of Trump's presidency. There was this feeling that why reopen Pandora's box? It didn't go so well the first time. Remember, after the first impeachment, President Trump's poll numbers were quite high. He arguably might have won the election had it taken place right then.
The first impeachment politically informed decisions made on the second impeachment.
Right, and especially because they were eyeing the beginning of a Biden presidency. And I think a lot of people, Democrats certainly, but even the Republican leaders thought that they could put Trump in the rearview mirror. Very vain hopes that they were thinking that way, of course, because fast forward 2 years later, we're still talking about President Trump, and we're still trying to investigate the events of that day on January 6th. I mean, there's another episode, really, in the second impeachment where during the trial, you have Jamie Raskin, who's actually a major player in both impeachments in this book in ways that people didn't realize he played a role. Jamie Raskin getting a vote on the Senate floor to call Republican witnesses. We document a scene where, Jamie Herrera Butler, who was the person who let the country know about Kevin McCarthy and Donald Trump's fight on January 6th, wakes up on the West Coast realizing that the prosecutors are trying to get her to testify, is scrambling on a Saturday morning of a long weekend to find a lawyer, calls Doug Letter, the House counsel, to say, what should I do? And he says, I can't advise you, but never passes on the message that she wants to do this to the actual prosecutors. And so they never know. And they're under tremendous pressure from the leaders of the Democratic Party to just get it over with so they can move on with the Biden agenda. And so thinking that it wasn't going to work, even though it was, their witnesses, the GOP witnesses, were in the process of trying to get ready, they give up the fight. And now we are kind of in the last throes of the January 6th committee that's doing things so differently, of course, as we've seen, right? Running impeachment, running their subpoenas through the courts, pulling in witnesses from the GOP to make this case, to try to convince the public. It's almost like a tacit admission that they had these opportunities back at the beginning of 2021.
What about the opportunity to get Republican votes? I want to give credit as well to your co-author, Rachel Bade, both the authors of Unchecked. Great book. And you do wonder, and I would really be curious what you found with your reporting here. Could they have won more Republican votes in the Senate trial? I mean, Trump's still on the scene now because he wasn't convicted in the Senate trial. When Democratic sources sit back and look back at the strategy, was there a different way they could have actually convicted Trump in the Senate?
Democrats are Democrats are divided about this. There are Democrats that think that they should have swung with every punch, that they should not have pulled the punches when it came to issuing subpoenas and then fighting them out in court. This goes back to the John Bolton question of the first impeachment, and it definitely goes towards the question of whether they should have brought those Republicans like Mike Pence's aides in to testify. And yes, in the second impeachment, look, we go into deep backroom detail about Mitch McConnell and his wrestling with things. We know because he said publicly that he found Trump personally responsible for this, but that he couldn't, it was a moot point because, you can't convict a former president even if he was impeached when he was in office. Mitch McConnell did not believe that, according to our reporting. Mitch McConnell very much says very blankly behind closed doors to people, I know this is an excuse. This is a procedural off-ramp. And he's actually
he thought he would destroy the party if he went too far in that direction?
Yes, but he was also in the process of trying to set up a way for him to be able to make the decision that would have said, yes, this is constitutional. He was going to pull in a Republican lawyer to argue the pro and the con of that argument. And he was going to do this very slowly and he was setting up the chess pieces when Rand Paul swept in and forced a vote on the floor on the constitutionality, and McConnell followed his party where they were. He didn't lead his party in a certain direction with his gut. He decided to stay. Look, McConnell likes to be the leader of the caucus, right? That's how he considers himself primarily to be.
And McConnell's not the only player, though. And looking ahead, I'd love to get your big picture take on impeachments now. You've deeply covered 2 impeachments. I spoke earlier today with Congressman Jim Banks, who may be in the House leadership next year. He's talking about possible impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas, possible impeachment of President Biden. Is it now a culture of impeachment on Capitol Hill?
I mean, look, our reporting and various constitutional law experts that we spoke to along the way suggest that we are in this position now where impeachment is no longer just the constitutional failsafe it was designed to be, but is turning into a weapon to express political animus of a higher order than your average everyday political fighting. And look, for that, we just have to be clear about one thing. Yes, you can argue about the merits of each impeachment case and how bad what Trump did or didn't. You can argue about the merits if you want to, but if you look at the rules of the structure of impeachment, impeachment is the only oversight power that the Constitution explicitly gives to Congress. But it also doesn't say how to do it. It's all based on precedent. During the Nixon impeachment and the Clinton impeachment, you had bipartisan buy-in on the rules of the road. You had witnesses that were fought for. You had the courts verifying that the congressional subpoena means something. You didn't fight those fights in the Trump impeachment. It kind of now there's 2 models for cutting those corners, and that just basically gives the GOP something to point to now next, as they are going to have very politically divisive cases that they're bringing against Biden, but they can point back and say, well, you didn't run all these things down. Why are you saying that our process is unfair?
Well, there'll be no one better to track it in the future than Rachel Bate and Karin Demerjen. We really appreciate you coming by to CBS News and sharing your insights. And thank you all for joining us today. Remember, you can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to watch previous episodes of our program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just go to cbsnews.com/redandblue.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
When folks